we are, this is Understanding Our Postmodern World, and as you can see, apparently a lot of people are interested in this topic. So we're talking about postmodernism and what it is and how we understand it. I'm going to kind of continue this each week. We're not doing this so that we can understand more. We're doing this so that when we talk to people, when we relate to people who are postmodern, and I would argue almost everybody in our culture in some way, shape, or form is postmodern now. That you can make sense of it and you can hear what they're saying. So then it makes you more effective in your witness. This is not just information gathering. In some ways, this is missionary training. We're being missionaries to Marion. We're missionaries in America. And so we're trying to learn how do we speak to people. So I want to make sure we continue to reiterate this. This is not just information. We're learning how to do what Pastor Tony's asked us to do, which is be people who are a witness for you in the world, but for Christ in the world. So last week we talked about, what did we talk about last week? Kind of get us all caught up. Talked about downregulation. What was downregulation? Do you remember?
If you get the same stimulation over and over and over in your mind, there's literal, like, physical filters that keep you from consciously realizing them, and there's also cultural filters. And we have to talk about things that not all the information gets to our conscious mind.
Sure, yeah.
The example you used last week was talking about like clothing, like it's constantly on our bodies, but after a while your brain is going to say it's used to it, it's going to filter that stimuli out. You're not conscious about you're wearing clothes all the time.
Right. So we kind of get used to things, and we don't even realize when something has gone from I'm thinking about it consciously to I'm not even thinking about it anymore, and it kind of just soaks in. And do you remember, how did that relate to postmodernism? Do we remember?
Well, we talked about the filters that we take things in through and that we're not even aware of that. We're not even aware of how we take information in and how we interact with the world around us.
Right.
Postmodernism says those filters are so strong that it's difficult to even come towards an approximation of objectivity.
Yeah. And that really is it. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about all the different ways that can be true. And remember, I'm not trying to make you postmodern. I'm not trying to make you believe in it. What I'm trying to help us do is so when we're talking with people, we can make sense of what they're saying, and we can kind of translate it into our world. We talked about first order, second order questions, and meta questions. What were those?
First order questions are just the very superficial stuff. You know, the when should I get up? What should I wear? What classes am I taking? What? It's just the very superficial.
What do I need to do to get there on time?
Right. The second order questions are the why do I take out the trash? Why do I want to do this? Why do I go to church? Why do I talk to people about Christ? Why do I do this?
Mm-hmm.
The
underlying ideas behind it. And what were meta questions? Do you remember?
How do we know anything? What is existence?
Right. Remember, most people live at the first order questions. Some people can get to the second order questions. When you get to the meta questions, not third order, excuse me, meta questions, people get, very few people actually go there and think about how do you know what you think you know. Not a lot of people want to really go there because that gets confusing and it's hard to work through. And those things have been given to us, and we're going to talk about that today. What we're going to talk about is the meta question of epistemology. So what is epistemology and how has it affected us? But before we get started, I want to read Matthew chapter 8. I looked at the board and wrote that down. I said, I'm supposed to read scripture today. So I want to read Matthew chapter 8, verses 23 through 27. And we're going to come back to this a little bit later. Then he, being Jesus, got into the boat, and his disciples followed him. Without warning, a furious storm came upon the lake, so that the waves swept over the boat. But Jesus was sleeping. The disciples went and woke him, saying, Lord, save us! We're going to drown. And he replied, Oh, you of little faith, why are you so afraid? Then he got up and rebuked the winds and the waves, and it was completely calm. The men were amazed and asked, What kind of man is this, that even the winds and the waves obey him? So we're going to come back to the scripture verse, this story about Jesus and the walking or the calming of the storm. We're going to come back to that because we're going to ask this question: how do you know that that's a true story? How do you know that that's true or false? How do we determine if that's a true story or not? That's kind of what epistemology is. Epistemology is how do you know what you think you know, or how do you know what you're claiming to know? What would we say? What would be some of the things that we would say? Sean drove his coupe to church today. Actually, it might be Jackie who drove the little coupe.
Actually, no, we drove this truck.
You know, all right, but you should have given us the answer, right? Because you have the Mini Coupe, right?
We do.
So, did Sean drive his Mini Coupe today? How did we figure that out?
Is there a Mini Coupe out there?
Is there a Mini Coupe out there? But do we know that it's his?
Do we know that he owns one?
Okay, I'm sorry, what?
Do we even know that he owns one?
Do we even know that he owns one? How do we know that he owns one? I mean, I've seen Jackie driving one around, but maybe Jackie's really...
Ask.
We could ask, but he could also lie, right?
Yeah.
Is he trustworthy?
Is he trustworthy? But what does it mean to be trustworthy?
Has he lied to me several times in the past?
This is where epistemology gets kind of fun, all right? You're asking questions about how do I know what I think I know? Well, if we're going to talk about the modern and the pre-modern way of knowing, all right? Now, pre-modern knowing. And you're going to find people in your life today who are kind of pre-modern in the way they operate. Let me describe it to you first, and then we're going to talk about the modernistic shift, what modernism did to this, okay? Pre-modern is, everything was kind of in a web, and I know this isn't really a web, but it's supposed to be a web, so pretend this is a spider web. Can we do that? It's supposed to be a web. Mike's drawing is not one of the top things that he does. But knowledge for a pre-modern person was in a web, and it was held together with very thin threads. And so, how do I know how to plow my garden? How do I know how to raise crops? In a pre-modern way, you'd say, my father, right? My father's a source of authority. He's a person who's told me these things. You had the church. You had government. These are sources of authority that are in your life. You had society. For example, if I'm walking down the side of the road and I'm wearing a hoodie, got it all pulled up, I'm covered in tats, like the one I have here. I'm just covered in them from head to toe, and it kind of smells funny, and I'm walking down the road, right? Society might have told us what? This is a bad person, avoid him. That's society as an authoritative person kind of shaping what we think about people. So society has this forming way. A pre-modern way of thinking was that all of these are sources of authority. The Bible. Now what they are is they're all held in tension. You also had personal opinion. How do I know, now remember I'm not saying good, bad, right, or wrong. How do I know that X person stole the stuff out of my barn? Well, I know it's probably Dawn. She's a shifty person. I've always never liked her anyway, and so she probably has had a grudge on me because she knows I don't like her, so she's probably the one who broke into my barn and stole my tractor. That's a personal opinion. In a pre-modern way, these things are all held in tension. Okay, they're all different sources of authority. They're different ways of knowing. By the way, one of the other ones was logic and reason. But logic and reason was held in tension against all these different sources of authority in the ancient world. Not in the ancient world. And there's some people in your life who you might be able to begin to recognize.
Would experience fit in this?
Absolutely. Experience would be, but it might shift into personal opinion based on your experience. Okay?
Come look through my stuff for your tractor.
I'll be over there this afternoon. All right, so we know through experience, so these things are kind of held in a tension. And this is how a pre-modern person would answer a question like, how do I know who broke into my house and stole my stuff? I might start off with, I think it's that person over there. He's kind of a bad person. I don't really like him. So I might go over, and my personal opinion has weight because it's my personal opinion based on experience. I might go to a government official. Now remember, don't think of government in a pre-modern way. Don't think of necessarily government as in our modern police system, but there's government as in like people like sheriffs, like the Sheriff of Nottingham. Okay, that sounds goofy to say that, but those people are people that were in authority. Okay, so these are all the different ways that we might know something. How many of us have heard people say things like, "Well, he's sitting in jail, so he's probably guilty"? No one's ever heard something like that? You're relying on a source of authority. Now, most of us would go, some of us who've been more modernistically trained would go, yes, but just because he's sitting in prison doesn't mean that he's actually guilty. For a pre-modern person, the fact that he's sitting in prison would mean what?
Well,
He's probably...
if you trust the authority, which is the judges, you say, not my job to determine if he's guilty or not guilty. We define guilty as the jury says he's guilty, so he's guilty.
So he must be guilty, right? These are all the different ways that you knew about the world. You know about the world. How do you know that you're supposed to plant crops at such and such a time? Well, my father raised me and he told me this. Well, how do you know that's the best time? Well, because my dad told me, and I trust my dad. And he never steered me wrong. We always had food on the table. So we always had food on the table, and we've always had everything right. Why is it irrational to trust my father? It's not, right? It's a source of authority. My family. So your family, government, the Bible, society, logic, reason, church, your experiences, these are all held in tension together. Now what happens is this begins to shift. One more thing I need to talk about is pre-modern people have a tendency to think that everybody else is in the same experience that they've had. That when you open the Bible and you read the Bible and you say, there's a story of Adam and Eve, or there's a story of Tamar and Judah in the Old Testament, modern people, pre-modern people will go, there's a sense of continuity, and continuity means sameness, between me and them. Like, they believe that they're kind of the same people that we are. So when I read the text, the Bible, I read it thinking about the way I would interpret it. Pre-modern people have a way of going, the way I see things is the way other people in the past would have seen things. Does this make sense? Now what that means is how you read the Bible, that's going to come out in that, right? I'm going to read the Bible when it says, John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. I think I know what everything means as a pre-modern person because I know the word love, and I know what it means to my culture. I know the word Son, Father, everlasting. I know what all those things mean to John because I know what they mean to me. I don't have to do historical research. Why?
Because you're connected to the past.
Because I'm connected with the past. There's a sense of continuity. The people who've come before are kind of like the people who are living now. Now this is going to shift, and the shift is called modernism, where all of these things begin to change. So the modernistic shift said this: the church is corrupt. It has been corrupting you. It has been a source of deficient authority. It's been leading you down the path of unrighteousness. We can no longer trust the church as a source of authority. It's dangerous to trust authorities like this. By the way, how many of us were running around in the 60s and we heard things like, never trust the man? That didn't just randomly show up. It wasn't like someone just plopped that down on the earth and it was like, oh, suddenly the hippies are this new thing. Man, don't trust anyone in authority. They're all out to get you. It's actually part of modernism. Okay? It's the modernistic shift. All sources of authority get cut out. How do I know that the guy who's wearing the hoodie and got the tats, how do I know that he's a mugger? We don't really know that he's a mugger. So society becomes not what's trustworthy. Society becomes something that's not trustworthy. It's not handling the truth rightly. So, what does that mean? You cut it off as a source of authority. What's this going to mean about the Bible?
Well, I've never seen a miracle, so that's just...
I'm going to cut it off too, right? What do I think about government? Right? We've seen a lot of trouble there. What do I think about my family? What is my family doing to me?
they're all racist anyway.
Right? So, and so what you end up with is personal opinion, logic, reason, and experience. Now, what does this seem like? We've cut off all social ties to everybody else but myself. It's incredibly self-focused. And so what they said, and part of the Enlightenment was, we're going to cut off all of these sources of authority, and we're only going to focus on what is logical and what is reasonable. So if it's reasonable and it's logical, that's how you'll know it's true. Now, is this a bad thing?
It's great for science.
Okay. How's it great for science?
Well, I mean, you get verificationism out of this.
You're about 4 weeks ahead of me.
But, but, you know, to say, you know, well, you can't just claim that fire is created by phlogiston. We need to test this. And if something is
Well,
on
it's going to come out of
fire.
experience.
Yeah,
I have to be able to experience it myself. Logic, reason, and experience. And so what the Enlightenment said is, all of these external forces, they're poisoning your mind. They're making you bigoted, they're making you biased, they're poisoning you. They're making you completely unable to see the truth. You're not knowing the truth anymore. So sources of authority, knowing in the world. How do I know how to plant crops? How do I know how to raise animals? How do I know anything at all? You get cut off. And so what you end up with is logic and reason become the arbiters of knowing. How do I know the truth? If it's logical and it's reasonable, it's the truth. What is this going to do to things like Jesus walking on the water? Calming the storm. What?
He found where the stones were.
The stones were. So they do that. What are we going to do with Jesus calming the storm? Yes, like the story we read today.
Well, I've never seen someone walk on water. I've never
Right.
seen that. We can't physically prove that that can happen, so how can we say that that's true?
Right. So you end up chopping these things off, and the Bible becomes a source of superstition, and you're going to hear that word a lot. The Bible becomes a source of superstition. Okay? And so what you lose with the pre-modern and the shift to the modern is you lose the web, and you begin to get what might be called foundations. Okay? This knowledge is built on this knowledge, which is built on this knowledge, which is built on this knowledge, and this is knowing. And at the root is human reason, human thought, and human philosophies. That's what ends up being left. And we've cut off all other sources of society. We've cut them all off so that we no longer listen to them, we don't heed them, we have nothing to do with them. One other thing that is really fascinating about this shift, right, is this is happening at the same time, and actually partly because of the scientific revolution. The scientific revolution is giving us a lot of the impulse to do this. So, who wrote, I think it was Natural Physics. I think that's what the name of it was. Sir Isaac Newton, right? No, Principles of Physics, that's what it was. Principles of Physics, not natural. Principles of Physics, Isaac Newton. What is Isaac Newton's, kind of, if you were going to lay it out, what's his whole theory, the theory of gravity? What is it? I know we just asked a huge question in physics, but no.
Two objects with mass are attracted to one another in a ratio of their masses and distance from one another.
Sure, I mean, it's a machine, right? Like you can think about gravity in terms of cause 1 plus cause 2 equals outcome 1, right? So if I have this cause and I have this cause and I did it together, this is mechanistic. Now, how to think of what do I mean by mechanistic? Think of a clock. Okay? Let's see here. Here's my little cuckoo bird who comes out and sings a little song. There's your little cuckoo bird. Think of a clock, right? And I'm not talking about the digital clocks, because this actually ruins the illustration. Because in 1781, they didn't have digital clocks. All they had was what? Mechanical clocks. What Newton does is, by describing gravity as a force that's mechanistic, A plus B equals C, every time. Every time. You can predict where planets are going to be in the sky. You can predict it with precision. So what you get is they believe that the universe, everything, was a result of mechanical forces. All things are like a clock. Everything. And God is like a gigantic clockmaker. It's not an accident that William Paley said that God is the divine watchmaker. It's this idea that the entire universe is a clock. And this is how you get to deism of the 16th and 17th centuries, which is God stuck his key in the universe and went, "Rrr, rrr, 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 rrr." And then he stepped back, and then the universe is running. And it's running on all these natural laws. Okay? So you take, what are you going to get when you knock off authority like the church? When you knock off authority like the Bible? When you knock off authority like family? When you knock off authority like society? When you knock off government, and then you take this and you get it together, what are you going to get as an outcome?
Conflicting narratives based on one's own experience.
Okay, fair enough. Let's pull that out a little bit more. Conflicting narratives.
If everybody's truth is self-evident, you can't tell somebody, it's objective, you can't tell somebody else that their idea of what is true is wrong.
It's going to end up there, but it doesn't start there. It definitely ends up there, and there's a reason it ends up there. But you're definitely right. The modernistic enterprise, which says we don't need all of these sources of authority to make sense of our world. We can make our world without God. We can understand the world without appealing to divine sources, without appealing to divine agency. We can do it all on our own. And they thought they were being objective. They thought they were being objective. This is the truth, yeah.
Yeah, well, and the idea that, everybody is reasonable, and if you believe something that's wrong, you just haven't been presented the fact. If we can just sit down and have a grown-up argument about it, and have a nice debate,
Yes.
we can reach the truth by the end.
Right. Now, once again, you're about, this time only 3 minutes ahead of where we're going. But what happens is a shift in truth. Truth begins to shift. In a pre-modern way of the world, truth is what?
Well, you've got a shift from truth is external, objective, and eternal, because that's rooted in, not that I love the phrase, but all truth is God's truth.
Yes.
It starts there. You lop that off, and truth becomes what is provable,
Okay.
and therefore it's no longer external, objective, and eternal. It's what's
They didn't get to that last part. They didn't get to the idea that it wasn't eternal. They're not there yet.
Exactly.
They believed that they could get at a truth that was eternal and objective. Now, how do you get there? Well, this is what they did. And truth in a pre-modern world was given to you. Your dad gave it to you.
Yeah.
Now, there's good sides and there's bad sides to this. How do you think you got hatred of another people group? It was given to you. Your father gave. Don't trust these people over there. They're not trustworthy. They'll take your stuff and kill you in a heartbeat. And your father gave you that, and you accepted it really without criticism. I'm going to take what my father gave me. Truth is given to you. It's bestowed. And it's bestowed through all these different layers, these different webs. The modernistic shift says, nope, truth is discovered through facts. It's discovered through facts. Now, you're going to begin to hear things that's going to sound very familiar, because this is the world in which we kind of are leaving, and we're entering into a different world. But because we're leaving it, we still have a lot of echoes of where we were. The idea is truth is constructed through, and there's no other way to say it but like facts. So who knows what Legos are? Right? Now I'm going to use the term fact packets. So think of a package, okay, like a little small package that shows up from Amazon at your house when you ordered it 3 years ago. It shows up at your house, and you suddenly have the package. And that package alters the kind of the world in which you live, even if it's a small one. Truth is constructed through facts. So the idea is this: how do we know if Sean brought his coupe to church today? We could ask Sean, but what can Sean do? Remember, what do we talk about in terms of knowledge of the world? We've cut it off. We've cut off all social ties, right? So asking Sean, which might be a pre-modern way, do I trust Sean? Do I believe in Sean? Do I want to follow? Right? That's what I might do in a pre-modern way. I cut that off because I might be biased. Right? My bias is affecting me. My belief that Sean's a trustworthy person is going to affect me, and it's going to change me. So what I have to do is I have to distance myself from my personal opinions. And that would be, I'm going to distance myself from my values, my beliefs, things that I really hold dear. I'm going to distance myself from them, and I'm only going to rely on what? The facts. I'm going to objectively go look at the facts. And so I would say, fact packet number 1. There is a car sitting in the driveway, sitting in the parking lot, and it's a coupe. There's another fact, right? What's another fact that we could do?
License plate.
We could run the license plate, right? What else should we do?
I have a picture of Sean's car a year ago. It has a dent in the left bumper.
Sure.
This also has a dent.
And this also has a dent in it. Are you sure that was his car? We're trying to figure out if that was his car.
See if he's got the key.
Does he have the key? Right? How about if we opened up the glove box and pulled out the driver's registration?
There you go.
How about insurance? Could we go check on insurance? Now think about this, guys. This is really interesting stuff. The more facts we have, the more what? Sure we are of the outcome. So what we do, what modernism did is it said, all of reality is just like this. All we got to do is just get enough facts together. If we get enough facts together, we'll build an edifice, right? And then once we have these facts, then we'll go on to another level of facts. And this is fantastic for things like what?
I guess someone brought a coupe.
Look at us trying to figure out about coops in the car. What else?
How many things are we doing illegally if it's blocked and?
Yeah, okay.
That's so we're doing a police investigation. I mean,
Yeah.
for things like law and order, I mean, it's, it's supposedly justice is blind, and it's like, I don't care, I understand you are in an emotional state, but, it's not registered under his name, it's not his
Right.
license plate, it's not, I don't think Sean did it, I know you saw a Mini Coupe, but I don't think it was Sean, so things like that.
Right, well, that idea that justice is itself blind,
Yeah.
that doesn't come out of the ground just randomly.
Right.
It's a belief about how do we get to the truth? How do we know about the world? They cut off all those pre-modern sources. We don't know about the world through society. We don't know about the world through the Bible, through the church, through my parents. All we have to focus on is facts. How many of you saw that old show? Was it Dragnet? I think it was. When they show up at the guy's house and the lady's like, "Oh my God, what's that horrible neighbor down the road? She just hates us and she's been trying to kill us." And then the detective goes to the right? Just the facts, ma'am. What is he doing? What is he saying? What's he saying about her opinion?
That doesn't matter.
Your opinion is just, it's biased. It's completely irrelevant. We're trying to find truth, and we're not going to find the truth with your personal opinion. We're only going to find the truth through facts. This is the modernistic shift. This shifts us epistemologically. You hear the meta questions, right? It shifts us from a pre-modern world to a modern world. And what do you think this does with our past? What do you think it does with all of the past that stretches back 6,000 years, 10,000 years? What do you think it does to all that past?
Irrelevant.
Why is that?
Because it just brings bias.
It just brings
They
bias.
have
though-
more facts. They didn't know. Aristotle was stupid because he thought it was a geocentric universe. He's just dumb.
He's just dumb. He didn't know any better. And what you get is the past becomes superstition. Anything that isn't based on facts is what? By definition in the system. It's superstitious. That's what superstition is in modernism. You're not basing your decisions on facts. You're basing your decisions on your personal biases. And what do we know about personal biases? Well, they don't lead us to truth. They don't tell us the truth. What leads us to truth? Facts. And so you've got to have facts. And if you don't have facts, you're not going to get to truth. This is the shift from pre-modern to modernism. Now, what's interesting is we are now seeing another shift from modernism to postmodernism. And it messes with all of this stuff. Yeah, someone had a hand up back here. Oh.
The truth and sad part of this is that in that shift, we took the Bible from being a source of authority to the Bible being something that had to be provable, had to be factual,
Right.
and it is now a topic of myth, not truth.
Right.
And so we have turned it back on itself. And then our interpretation is no longer based on the history of the church and how the church has understood it, how historians have understood it.
Right.
It is devoid of all of that, and so all interpretation of Scripture
Right.
is in the here and now, and apply what is provable, and we have ripped out God from His Word.
Yeah, Nash.
I was just thinking back to when I was in high school. I remember reading Lee Strobel's book, The Case for Christ,
Yes.
and that was a very powerful book for me because it gave me a lot of those facts.
Facts!
It gave me a lot of those facts to help support why I believe
Yes.
what I believe.
The church wasn't stupid. It made the shift with it. Well, you can say it's stupid or was stupid. It's tricky. But this is exactly what apologetics does. Church apologetics go, okay, if you're only going to make decisions with facts, then we're going to give you the facts. Right? So it made the shift right along with them. And this is how you get apologetics, which is, look, here's my list of facts. Shh. Jesus rose from the dead. Fact, 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 fact. Here's your list of facts. Jesus didn't rise from the dead. We have more facts on our side. You lose. Now, here's the fun part. The atheist goes, switch. We have more facts on our side. Fact, 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 fact. You don't have enough facts on your side. Fact, 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 fact. We win. You lose. Now it gives us three things you can pull out of this. One, they believed truth was objective. It was objective and it was external. It's objective and it's outside themselves and it's obvious. How many have heard the phrase, the facts speak for themselves?
We
Who's heard
find
that?
these truths to
To
be
be self-evident. It's not an accident that this got put into the Constitution. They believed truths of the world were obvious to a person who was using logic and reason. They're obvious. And anyone who can't see that it's obvious, there's something wrong with their logic. You must not be a logical person. You must not be able to reason properly. That is the modern, pre-modern to modern shift. Objective truth isn't given to us, we find it. And we find it through facts. And facts give us truth. That's kind of the foundation of how it all works. Now I'm going to start picking it apart. Because postmodernism begins to pick this thing apart. It picks this whole edifice to complete a lunacy. Oh, okay. I'm trying to check out my outline here, so I'm...
What's your opinion on it, Mike?
Okay, so this functions. The whole truth is a compilation of facts. Functions incredibly well if we're trying to figure out if Sean drove a coupe to church today. I mean, it's incredibly effective at that. I mean, we can use this fact, and this fact leads to this, and the more facts you have, you're kind of going, yeah, it sure seems like that's Sean's car. Right? Well, here's the problem with it. It works phenomenally well with things that are like stuff, hard things that you can touch. But here's one, using this model. How do you determine the truth or falsehood of this statement? Humans are good. Bring your facts. Bring your fact table to me. What fact table are you going to bring?
For a philosophical construct, it's very difficult to put hard facts to prove a point.
Well, both sets are theoretically infinite. I mean, if you just look at, quote, facts, I can give you a nearly infinite list of good things people do, and you can give me a nearly, an infinite list of bad things people do, and we get nowhere.
Well, here's the trick. We have one more definition, we got to go one more step back. What is good?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? What is good? What facts are you going to bring to this conversation to tell me what good is?
Yeah.
What fact? Come on, give me the facts. What's factually? Can you go out in the world, look at it, and go, that's good? That is what's called a value.
Yeah.
And what did the Enlightenment do with values?
Man.
Cut them off. We don't need values, we only need facts. So this is where modernism really begins to just crumble. Because it's fantastic with things that are around here, like did Sean drive a coupe to church this Sunday? But when you're asking things like, what is the meaning of the universe? What is good? What is evil? How do we know them? Facts suddenly become, wow. I don't know. And so this is where things begin to struggle. What you end up with is this model. The universe is a machine, and it's working on facts, and these facts are working in flow. And then you run into a buzzsaw grinder. That's what's called metaphysics. What is justice? What fact are you going to bring to the table to lay out in front of me that says what justice is? What is reality? See how this begins to bleed over from epistemology. You ever get a cut under your shirt, on your arm, and then it bleeds through the shirt, and you now have blood on your arm and your shirt? You thought you only had a cut on your arm, but now it's bled through, right? It bleeds, this problem bleeds through into other things like ontology, axiology. These problems, they don't stay where they're supposed to stay. They bleed into other areas. What is reality? How do you know what reality is? Here's one that they still have no clue. What is consciousness? Who's making a choice when I choose to pick up my tea and drink it? Who made this choice? Did I do it biologically? Was it pre-programmed into me, or did I choose it? And who is me? Right? These are the things that end up chewing up modernism, which is why you're getting the postmodern shift. Yeah.
In the context of last week, it seems like modernism is, like it's way better answering first order questions. Did Sean drive a coupe? You know, how does fire work? But it's a little weaker on the second level question.
And then when you get to meta questions, it's falls apart. The whole thing begins to fall apart. And this is why philosophically they moved on from modernism a lot sooner than most of the rest of the culture did. And actually, most scientists are still back in the modernistic world. I have a video I'd like to show you here. I think we have 5 minutes. It's only 5 minutes long, but it's a debate between Gary Habermas and Kenneth Humphreys, and they're debating the resurrection. I'm not trying to get you to believe the resurrection or not. What I want you to focus on is Kenneth Humphreys. He's the guy who kind of looks like Antoine LaVey, the devil guy, you know? He's over on the left-hand side. He's the non-Christian atheist, and Gary Habermas is the little fatter, plumper guy over on the right. He probably, hopefully he doesn't see the video and write me a nasty email. I like you, Gary Habermas, you're good. So he's over here, and Kenneth Humphreys is over on the left. What he's going to say is you're going to hear Habermas talk about people have access to grind. What he means is this, is that the objectivity that you think you have, you're not really as objective as you think you are. He's going to say things like, philosophy is going to knock you out of this. Okay? Philosophy got through all of this in some ways in the mid-20th century. Okay? Really, and that's why you get the postmodern shift. Okay? And almost everyone philosophically agrees with it. Then you're going to hear the other guy say, it's too fantastical, it's too crazy, it's obviously false. And it goes back to the whole idea of, for him, the truth that Jesus didn't walk on water, was raised from the dead. None of those things, none of them are obvious. So because they're not obvious to him, they can't be obvious to who? Anybody. Because they're not obvious to him, they're not obvious to anybody. And then what you're going to hear him say is there's no basis in fact. Well, what is he meaning? He's playing, and this is what I want you to hear. Gary Habermas, in some ways, is playing in some postmodern stuff. Not heavily postmodern, but he's bringing some of these themes in. Kenneth Humphreys is playing in the theme of modernism. I want you to listen to how they sound, because he sounded like a lot of religious philosophers about 150 to 200 years ago. Okay? So I'm not trying to make you believe anything. What I'm wanting you to hear is listen to how they talk. Listen to how they make arguments. And listen for those things and see what he has to say. Let's hope it's still up there. Can we think it's still up there? Oh, yes, it is. There it is.
Or a willingness to suffer unto death. And we really don't have, as you say, most of the so-called 12 apostles. We could argue about the 4 that we do.
Okay, Paul gives a list of things he suffered. Remember, shipwrecked 3 times, beaten 40 minus 1. Actually, beaten 40 minus 1 3 times. He's stoned and left for dead outside. Paul lists these things he went through, and then tradition tells us he was finally beheaded during the reign of Nero in the early 60s. Okay, but all I'm saying is, I think that's a fair definition of persecution. Being stoned and left for dead, 3 times 40 minus 1 lashes. I think those are fair definitions. I think you're justified to say that's personal.
How would that be so if we're dealing with a religious tract that has no basis in fact? How do we know that
What's a religious tract?
How do we know that what Paul wrote was actually truthful? Who else validates the claims of Paul? Unlike Jesus
Notice the
Christ,
connection between truth and fact.
to here and there. Nobody else refers to Paul. He doesn't appear in any secular history at all.
He does appear in one secular source, and he does appear in 5 Christian sources that can be considered early. Now, if Christians are prejudiced because they mention Paul, then atheists are prejudiced for confirming atheism. I mean, it's not like atheists are automatically valueless and Christians have all kinds of values. Both sides have access to ground. Both sides have access to ground.
I don't think anyone makes themselves rich by being an atheist. But plenty of people make themselves rich by being Christian.
But what does that have to do with who's
It means
access to
they have a vested interest in maintaining untruths in a way that an unbeliever does not.
But you don't have an extra grind. You just come at this totally neutrally, and you don't have any beliefs. You bring nothing to the data. Ken, I'm not being nasty, but a cure for that is a course of philosophy.
I, like anybody else, including yourself, Gary, I have subjective views on
I
this.
sure do, and so do I.
But what is the more extraordinary claim there?
Listen to what he said.
God exists and raises people from the dead, or in the absence of any evidence for that claim, that it's not true.
Okay, it's certainly not the absence of evidence, but you say, which is more extraordinary? See, your comment betrays the same kind of angle, the prejudice that we all have. It betrays the same thing. When you say, what in the world can make you believe in God or resurrection or afterlife or something like that? That's a complicated thesis that we're unwarranted in conceding only from a naturalistic viewpoint. If God exists, and if there's an afterlife, if there's a resurrection, it's all of a sudden not just, it's just not uncomplicated, it's the answer to the universe. What I mean is for you to say,
Okay, did you hear what he was saying?
Yeah.
Can you hear what I'm talking about? He's living in a modernistic frame set. His truths are obvious. You couldn't possibly be a rational person and disagree with him. And on the flip side, you have Habermas who says you have an axe to grind. You have values that are impacting the way you're reading the data. This is what postmodernism brings to the table. It is not the end of all civilization, but it's an interesting twist to how this whole conversation goes. Is this making sense? Yes.
There's a video being shown in high schools that's doing exactly what you're describing today. It's called Darwin's Tree of Life. It's fact after fact after fact after fact.
Yes.
And in there, they sarcastically refer to believers.
Yes.
Saying believers are actually naive and
Yes.
believe this.
Wait, you see
And
superstitious?
the last statement in the video is, man does not have dominion over the animal kingdom. And it's doing exactly what you're saying. And it's being shown to our kids in high school.
And it honestly is an outdated way of thinking, but the scientific community still operates there because they really don't know a lot of philosophy. They really don't. They haven't figured out that, what do you mean by objective? Are you sure that truth is consistent of facts and that's it? Humanity is good. Humanity is evil. What facts are you going to bring to the table? You can't do it. So anyway, this is what we discussed this week. This is the pre-modern to modern shift. We're going to talk about more things that make the shift from modernism to postmodernism. Let's pray. Father, we're thankful for this opportunity to be here. We're thankful for the reality that you gave us minds, brains to think, that we are not just limited to just what we think, but Father, you've opened up the whole world to us and you've given us multiple sources. We ask now that you take us and lead us home in your word. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.